I'm Chris Glidden.
I'm Nathan Liggy.
We are Tiger Wolf.
Today we are talking about Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
If you haven't seen it yet, and you're watching this video,
If you haven't seen it,
don't watch.
Why are you searching these videos?
Why are you looking on YouTube for the new Star Wars movie?
Why aren't you showing it in the theater?
Maybe they're looking for the pirated version. You know that there's a whole team of probably like 20 people just sitting waiting for it to go up on YouTube. Yeah. Ready? Let's take it down, boys! For those of you who are looking for the pirated version and you ended up in a Tiger Wolf video, congratulations. As my kids would say, two lame dads talking about lame stuff.
Talking about a dad franchise at this point.
A dad franchise.
Dads are making a lot of money for this movie.
That's right.
Breaking records everywhere. We've spoken before on our podcast about how Star Wars is the mayonnaise on white bread franchise.
You can listen to the podcast.
Yeah. Pause. Time to listen. And we're back. Welcome back. So, new blood on this movie, starting with J.J. Abrams as the director. Who, again, we talked a little bit about this in our last podcast.
Insert lens flare.
Exactly. And there's obviously a conscious choice leading into the movie about doing things a little bit differently. A lot of similarities, but they have a black male lead. They have a female lead. One of a few different things people knew going into it that would be different.
Yeah. I think if I was to look for a word to describe Episode 7, well, there's a couple words. Number one, I would say cautious. Mm-hmm. Number two, well, the number one word is probably respectful. I think if I was to pick a word, it was all you had was one job.
Yeah.
That's all it is to make sure that you respect the originals.
Yeah.
Like, respect what's there.
Do you think it was easier for them to do that because it was following Jedi as opposed to like making the prequels in a way you're having to build more, whereas making follow-ups to Jedi and the older movies, you're using like X-wings that look like they look familiar.
Yeah.
You know,
there's
uniforms that look familiar.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, and
you're bringing back
and
like
it's
characters
it's
that
way
you've
more
seen
open
before.
too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like it's almost in a way you have a harder job with episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Sure, absolutely. That's my point. Yeah.
Yeah. Because like going into episode 7, it's like all you have to do is like bring back the old characters because you've never seen them in a movie you haven't seen those characters since Return of the Jedi in 1983.
When Han Solo comes on screen, Chewbacca comes on screen, there's like an audible gasp from each one. And with everybody, like I can't remember, like C-3PO kind of appears a little bit out of nowhere when like Han Solo and Leia are looking at each other and people are like, oh, C-3PO.
Oh, C-3PO.
Princess Leia, and
spoiler.
I mean, I'll totally admit, like I was jazzed every time I saw a familiar face on there, or even just like an X-wing flying around.
Did you have an audience that like applauded?
No, like
were you disappointed about that?
The Lucasfilm thing came up and I was like, woo! I was the only one.
Really? Oh man! And so I expected people to be like, woo! Like going crazy, but there's nothing. It was just like
it's kind of a Jar Jar sound effect.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I can't help myself.
Oh man, I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit, but I feel like the legacy of this one is that it makes the prequels more relevant somehow, even more than they were. We were more ready for this one than we ever would have been otherwise. Like if George had made
there was more fanfare about episode 1. Like that's what I was saying about like applause. Like when in episode 1 in '99, people were like, whoa!
Yeah.
Like applauding in the crowd, and there was standing ovations. Like, it was exciting. I was like, this is gonna be good. We're gonna have standing ovations, and the crowd is gonna be like cheering, but that didn't happen, at least the times
I don't know.
went.
Yeah, I mean, that might have just been our experience. I don't know, because I mean the hype has been out of control, and
totally,
and like the box office numbers are record setting already. So that's one thing I don't kind of get is like, why are people so like, I'm totally on board and I'm super excited and got to see it and I'm thrilled, but why were people so excited when for the most part they didn't like the last 3 Star Wars movies that they came out?
I think they just so desperately wanted one to be good.
Yeah, I guess so. This is kind of like
there's some redeeming qualities.
This is the Star Wars comeback movie.
Yeah,
totally.
I won't get too hung
comeback.
up. Yeah, everyone loves a good.
Yeah.
It's like the underdog, but not the underdog. Everyone knew this was going to blow out the water.
The filthy rich underdog.
Yeah. Yes.
Right off the bat, there's just murder of a bunch of village innocents.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I guess I can't bring my 6-year-old to this one.
Yes.
Which I was hoping to use as an excuse to go again. But
no dice.
yeah, so I mean, I wasn't thinking about that beyond that point, but it does. I mean, it starts out with the dark tone, which I think a lot of the best stuff in Star Wars has had a heavy tone to it. I mean, a lot of people love Empire the best, and
They got Lawrence Kasdan to do it again. The guy who wrote Empire and Return of the Jedi. Only the best ones. And they got it back.
Yeah.
Duh. What a difference a real writer makes. Just saying. Like, a real writer. Not a fake writer. Not George Lucas. Herp-de-derp-de-derp-de-derp. Jar Jar. Misa, writer.
I don't want to think too hard about things like writing and stuff like that, because
You should.
if you look at it too closely, there are holes in it. And
Oh yeah, there's lots.
but that's not the point, though. Like, the point is just like, this is the adventurous space romp that the other movies were. Like, this recaptured that whole thing from A New Hope, where like you're just following this little band of guys who kind of go from adventure to adventure. They're on Tatooine, they're on the Death Star, and they're with the rebellion. And this is like very much creates that same kind of feeling again.
I really like that they brought out for the first time they brought out the humanity of the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
I thought that was really notable. Like, and yeah, they did it with the one main character, but even like
There's a few things like that actually.
like the guy's dying, like
even
you
in the
feel a
opening scene,
stormtrooper
exactly.
dying, like you're like, oh, this is great.
Yeah. Well, and on the flip side of that too, you saw like the villagers have like terror on their face,
Yeah, totally.
which you don't actually see in like Star Wars movies at all. It's all just like adventure and fun, and there's no price to anything. Like, people are dying all over the place, getting shot by blasters and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, this added more of that. I thought some of the humor was more intentional.
Yep.
Like almost self-aware, like Han Solo talking about like throwing the captain of the guard, whatever she was, into like a trash compactor, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
It was like a throwaway joke.
We'll see what happens with that character, because the girl playing
I expected way bigger things from the Chrome Trooper.
the Chrome Trooper. Yeah, I kind of assume the Chrome Trooper will be back.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So if they're they did get thrown in the trash compactor, then probably that was a writing decision.
Yeah.
But my favorite kind of humorous part that also kind of, I think, helped explain things a little bit was like when they're like getting ready to kind of break into the base and lower the shields. And again, it's like all echoes of like being on Endor and all that kind of stuff.
Pretty much, it's like all three, episode 4, 5, and 6, all boiled into this movie.
Right. And again,
let's get the best scenes from all of them.
And they're setting up kind of the proxies of like the new generation. I thought they did a good job with that. Like, I'm on board to watch Finn and Poe and Rey and all of them continue the adventures.
Yep.
And I like seeing old Luke Skywalker with the big beard and everything. And
you mean he's in the movie?
just barely. But that's kind of cool too. Like, that totally goes against expectations.
Well, it was a great carrot. The whole like the was it horses? What do you use to like? Is it horses that you pull the carrot?
You do the carrot of the whip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually thought like when they blew up the Star Killer, which is a kind of a cool shout out to Sun Killer or something like that.
Okay,
from the books.
let's pretend I know nothing.
Yeah,
What's the Star Killer again?
Absolutely. So Star Killer is like the huge laser they built into a planet.
It's the Death Star.
The Death Star that's
Death
like
Star
10 times the size of the Death Star. Yeah. So what was interesting with that to me, and right away, there was, again, in the preamble to this, that people were like, oh, they've eliminated the extended universe. There's all this history they've gotten rid of.
How dare they?
Yeah, they have to kind of build up, the whole galaxy again, kind of a thing. But they're actually taking things from the books that exist. Like the Sun, or the Star Killer, they call it in this, is from a book. They call it like the Sun Eater or something like that in the book. But it's exactly the same idea. So that's pulled from like...
which one was it? From Heir to the Empire type?
No, it's I think it's a Kevin Anderson series called... Actually, I might even have it over here. The Young Jedi something or other. Jedi Academy Trilogy, I'm pretty sure that's the one. So they're pulling stuff straight out of it. Han Solo's son in this is Kylo Ren. Mm-hmm. He's turned to the dark side. In the books, they have twin kids.
Yeah.
Their son turns, like, he's very much just following Darth Vader's legacy, which I think is actually like a really cool idea. The fact that, Darth Vader would have a strong pull for you because he's your blood. He's your grandfather. Like, I kind of forget about that because Luke was the one who had that strong connection in those movies.
Totally.
But I mean, Leia, like, that is part of her family too, right?
Han Solo is like totally gives in to anger and all
absolutely.
of those like dark side emotions all the time. Yeah. So you add that kind of impulsive nature. Like, I think if there was one thing I was to say about the whole thing of this film, I love Ben Wren. So here's the thing: if his last name is Ren because of Kylo Ren, and his real name is Ben, then he's Ben Ren. Ben Ren, right? Kylo Ren is Ben Ren, and it made me laugh really hard to realize that he's Ben Ren.
Not Ben Solo.
He could be Ben Solo, but that doesn't sound as nice as Ben Ren. He's like, I'm Ben Ren. I'm going to change my name to...
It's Basilius. Apparently he comes from like the Knights of Ren.
Oh.
So that's why he took the name. And then the little flashback scene where like they're standing around Luke, or what you assume is Luke. That's like when he's destroyed his like Jedi Academy and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
That's like the Knights of Ren are sort of these dark guys. I guess I'm making some assumptions here based on like books and stuff like that. But they're tapping into like stuff that I think for like
tapping into extended universe a little
absolutely. So if you're like a hardcore Star Wars fan and you know all this stuff, then
you're like,
it's kind of exciting to see it actually get pulled into like something more legitimate than the books.
Yeah, well, the films are the source. That's
absolutely
that's the pillar.
I mean, the books, like to be honest, especially from like the early '80s till '99, the books were like all the filler to keep you going.
Yeah,
and it was never, even when it was canon, it was never really as like real as the movies. As soon as that kind of clicked for me that they're doing that, I was like, that's such a brilliant idea to get rid of all that other stuff, because there's a lot of it that's crap. And
they started doing like what Todd McFarlane did when he took over Spider-Man. He's like, hey, there's a lot of good stuff here, but I need to free myself of the trappings of like all the continuities, so that I can use the best of it and make a new continuity fresh.
Anything that you thought was cool about the extended universe before is potentially still in play.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I definitely loved the Kylo Ren character. I think what I was really struck by with him, like, of course, I really like Adam Driver.
Yeah,
I really like Adam Driver as an actor. Anyways, like I think a lot of the stuff that he is in, he's quite good. As an actor, he's just tremendously strong. I mean, it was interesting watching it tonight though, because watching it the second time, because when there's a scene where he takes off his mask for the first time and you see him, somebody in the audience just went and just laughed out loud and was like totally like had the giggles afterwards, because he looks so like kind of hair is like long and flowing and you're like, what? It just is this kind of like, it's a really kind of a funny, it's kind of a little bit awkward. You're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But like once you kind of that initial sting comes out, there's this really amazing thing. It's like, I feel like, again, going back to the prequels are what made this movie. Because of what happened with how Darth Maul had zero character development whatsoever. He just kind of showed up and he was like, I'm Darth Maul and I'm dark. Woohoo! Like, it's boring, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, you had like the Kylo Ren, he shows up and he shows you his humanity. And he's like, at the beginning, he's really powerful, and then they slowly go, hey, he's got a whole bunch of character flaws, and here's all his flaws. It's really exciting. Like, it's fantastic. That scene where she's like, I'm not going to trust a monster, so he like decides to let his guard down and take his mask off. And it's like, it's fascinating for a Sith-type character to do those kind of things. It's showing more dimensionality to a character that's a Sith character.
Well, and that character is meant to show humanity, and that definitely does do that. I didn't anticipate it, but when he's with Rey, who I assume is his sister or his cousin or something, some family connection there.
Some sort of Skywalker blood.
Exactly. Whether she's like Luke's kid or... I mean, makes sense that she'd be Luke's kid because she gets left behind on this very Tatooine-like planet.
I wonder who he would have breeded with.
To probably be hidden. Well, I mean, maybe they're bringing in Mara Jade, who is like...
Extended Universe, sorry.
Extended Universe, who is like probably the most beloved created character from the Extended Universe.
Right.
So, I mean, that would be, for like the Star Wars geeks, that would be a huge win.
Yes.
Just like almost as easy of a win as like bringing back Han Solo and all those people.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if at all that's potentially coming down the road, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Plus, like her getting left on Jaipur or whatever, which I think is actually Jaipur is like a Middle Eastern city, I think, in Turkey or something like that. So Jaipur's probably wrong. Whatever.
You guys could correct us on this, of course. Feel free to comment and disagree with anything. We're here to talk.
Yeah, at this point I'm not even really talking about the movie. I'm just
musing about
guesses.
the awesomeness.
But it certainly makes sense that she would have been left on this desert planet to be hidden from Kylo Ren, because it's just like Luke Skywalker's story, and in the care of this benevolent old Max von Sydow character, whoever he is. And which as we explore her backstory, I assume we'll learn more about him. But anyways, there are those layers that they didn't tell. And I read an interview recently where J.J. Abrams was saying that, like, you know, we think of like those old prequels, and you know, we know that Luke is or sorry, Vader is Luke's father. We know like kind of all these truths, but when you watch the first movie, you didn't know any of that stuff. And like a lot of the things that were revealed were eventually revealed, like the fact that Leia was Luke's sister and that kind of stuff. I mean, when you're first watching the movie and you see him kiss Leia, you don't know that they're brothers.
It's not weird. You go back and watch it and you're like, now this is weird.
Yeah. But at the time, maybe it was a little bit tantalizing, you know? So, which, you know, kind of works because then you kind of get it, you know, like what's going on there. But then you find out, yeah, that the brother and sister is weird. I mean, his point was that like a lot of this stuff wasn't revealed.
Especially because she says, "I've always known."
Yeah.
Even when I kissed you.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
Which, I won't get into that. But I mean, it was an interesting point that there's a lot of stuff intentionally not revealed yet.
Yeah.
This movie probably in a lot of ways is a setup. And again... Yeah. Is about making sure that everyone is invested in these new characters.
Totally. Who's your favorite character in
the new ones?
In the new ones.
It
could be anyone in it.
I mean, again, I've watched it once, so this could easily change, but I probably would say Rey, actually.
Yep.
I don't know. She has just kind of like... I hope she's not like kind of too strong, too fast in kind of the Jedi stuff, because you're supposed to train your whole life and all that kind of stuff. But I like kind of the... like how she sort of just was figuring it out, and in a way, like Kylo Ren's interaction with her kind of allowed her to unlock her ability. Like, so
that's nice.
Came out of that confrontation sort of, and then also that scene also worked really well because again the helmet came off, and that allowed the tension to be more visible between the two of them as he's trying to get what he wants out of her.
Yeah.
I thought she was like. I thought he was like a really good kind of menacing character, really legitimately frightening, you know, like as a villain should be. And I like the dynamic of him trying to live up to his grandfather's legacy.
Totally.
And I totally believed in her ability to stand up to that.
And I kind of love that. That's kind of the first thread with which she discovers her abilities. Yeah. Because she discovers his fear first. Yeah. It's kind of fun.
Well, I like too that. I mean, she obviously has, like, she's gifted in similar ways to Han, which suggests that she's Han and Leia's daughter. Like, she's on Millennium Falcon, she just sort of gets all the quirks of it right away.
Right.
But you also see, like, Luke and her and how she operates, and Leia and her in just sort of that strong female sort of action.
And also you have, like, the extended, like, Leia hug, which is a little bit weird, actually. It's like, at the end, she comes back, and then Leia's just like... And I was like, is this just female understanding? Like, what's with the characters? Like, having this weird and
there might also be
extended embrace.
She's probably the one who's really sharing what happened with Han, right? So there's maybe that common bond, sympathy going on there as well. So, but that's what there's still like kind of layers to be pulled back, where I think it seems like that'll make a little more sense. They're taking advantage of the fact that they have several movies that tell the story. Yep. Which I think is great. So yeah.
I expected this movie, I think I almost expected it to be better. I expected it to be like a step better than it was. Like, I think it was a little bit conservative and safe, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's probably what was needed, because after the disaster of those trilogy, like everyone was craving a real Star Wars film, and it just felt like it. Like the level of care that was put into everything was fantastic, and they were really careful not to do anything that would be Jar Jar like. I think the most risky thing that they did was almost crack jokes. Like it was almost like sometimes it was. I'm like, is this too wisecracking? But it was fine because you were just. It was like, this is the new Star Wars. Yeah. It's going to have a little bit more. Real modern humanity to it, so I think it brought it forward and made it so that I don't know. I wonder if it leans too heavily on its past. I was trying to watch it as though I knew nothing about Star Wars the second time, and it was really hard. It was all the tropes of being around everything, and it's so pervasive through culture. It's hard to watch it with fresh eyes.
But I think that, again, it's setting up to leave that behind. Because you're following these new characters. And even making choices like not having R2D2 along for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have like BB-8 obviously is a very
C-3PO,
similar style of character, and they used him really well, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, in every other iteration we've seen of Star Wars, is like R2D2 is there everywhere, and after a while, as much as those characters are enjoyable and their dynamic works,
There's just too much of them.
it's just too convenient that they're there for everything. You know,
Right,
like like you watch enough of it and you're like, you know, the real hero of this whole thing is R2D2. Like, saved their lives like how many times?
Oh, and especially in the prequels, because he's like zapping people. He's like, look, he's the wacky robot, and he can zap people. Bzz, 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 bzz.
Oh, yeah. Well,
he's so funny.
the prequels are like, hey, look, now he's got like jets so he can float around and stuff. And we're like, well, where were those in like in the other movies when he could have used them? And like C-3PO was built by Darth Vader, but he doesn't have any idea who he is when he runs
because
into him
they
later.
conveniently had to wipe it at the end. Like there was all kinds of
Right.
convenience plays that they had to kind of shove in there.
And that stuff just wasn't necessary. And so it's like it's a braver choice, I think, to kind of just bring in like a new droid, bring in new characters in certain places, even if they're very similar to the old ones. At least the universe seems a little more real. And the thing that the prequels really didn't have is it never really felt lived in because it was so cartoony, so CGI heavy.
Yep.
And
They slowly tried to scuff it up to make it feel more real
throughout the prequels.
Yeah, no, so you watch them kind of progressively get grittier.
Yeah.
And more like rubbing stuff in. But I think.
But you never lose a sense that
it felt too digital. Like he was almost too. He was trying too hard to push digital filmmaking technology too soon.
As good as CGI looks, and it does look amazing, and there's some great CGI in this too, the physics of it have never been good enough to suggest reality. Mm-hmm. Not unless
there's still a slight disconnect.
Right. Not unless you're like doing the tennis balls on a character.
Yep.
Like the Gollum style thing, where the movement comes from a human movement.
Yep. It's interesting that it always has to come back to humanity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's that tiny character in this. I can't remember what her name is. The one with like the goggles.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can't remember her name either.
Yeah, but I mean that too is.
She's a good character. She was like the female Yoda, essentially.
Yeah, very wise. Yeah, exactly. And again, I mean, she is to Rey what Yoda is to Luke for sure. I mean, she kind of provides insight for her to kind of start her journey.
Yep.
So that character is actually had an actor who. So again, I'm assuming that all the movement and stuff was based on a real human.
Right.
I think it's the girl who was nominated or maybe even won an Oscar in 12 Years a Slave. I can't pronounce her name. There's actually a few performances in this by people who you wouldn't know are in it otherwise.
Right.
Like I mentioned, the girl who is the Chrome Trooper. You know, for example,
you touched on BB-8. And I think BB-8 was probably my most pleasant surprise. I was impressed with the design choice of the character because of the ability to use it for emotion.
Yeah.
Because with the curvature of the ball, you could have the head like go kind of downwards, like I'm depressed.
Yeah. When Finn's trying to get him to share the coordinates of the base, and he's like flicking back and forth, like his loyalty is torn in that moment.
Yeah.
And he can just depict that really effectively.
Totally.
I think the design of him is really quite brilliant and even quite practical in his motion. Like R2D2, the way he's built, would actually have a very hard time getting around. Like when he's rolling around like Tatooine in A New Hope.
He has to go like kind of around a long way.
So awkward. And the fact that they did him BB-8 practically also I think adds to, for me, the coolness of it, because it makes sense that it works. Like this sort of magnet counterbalance that's happening that allows him to kind of keep his head top the whole time, and there's no it just makes sense. So anytime you take something that's not human and then are able to imbue like a real emotional reaction out of the interaction with that thing,
a la Wall-E.
Wait, totally Wall-E, Wilson in Castaway, like that kind of stuff. Like I love that kind of stuff. So I thought they did that really well here. Like they're, they create this scenario where there's a real relationship, and I find like when I watch Star Wars movies in general, I'm slowly going through the Clone Wars cartoon with Sabine.
Bold.
Yeah, it's whatever, but I mean, it's always interesting to me in
it's
this.
A lot of episodes.
In this, it is. That's why we'll watch one a week, whatever. In the Star Wars universe, they do interact with droids in a way that they care about them. At least the main characters often do. The good characters love their droids. The other characters in the universe treat them with indifference.
Who doesn't love their droids, really?
But like in a lot of like true sci-fi, like your dynamic with your robot servant is often very different. Either like fear of them taking over or treating them as just like household appliances and stuff. So it's funny. It's interesting how in Star Wars they're like pets almost. I did hear someone say like, how is it that everyone understands a robot but no one understands Chewbacca? Which is kind of an interesting point. Yeah, I mean, plot-wise, I was just sort of like, I was just along for the ride, you know, like, oh, we went to the, we're on the desert location, cool. Okay, now we're in space and we're on a ship. Okay, cool. Okay, now we're on like the green planet with like the sort of hidden little pirate base or whatever it is. Neat, you know. we're on like
Neato.
Luke's on like a giant water planet with a few rocks sticking in it. All right, that's cool. Like, I mean, like the old movies were essentially the same thing. You know, like, oh, we're starting on this ice planet Hoth. Okay, great. Now we're on to like Dagobah.
Well, he's very intentional about usually having a different,
very extreme differences.
Yeah, extreme sceneries in each film.
And this follows that.
I think this is the first time it's actually in a forested, like a snow-covered forest. I don't think there's a snow-covered forest in the other ones. I was trying to remember from the original
I did think
6.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Because you've got a Hoth that's like totally like Arctic.
And then you have Endor, which is a forest.
And then you have Endor, which is the forest. But you don't really have the Canadian wilderness snowy thing.
I mean, the Ewoks are furry, so I imagine that they're probably evolved to grow fur to handle winters that
and
exist.
They would. We just didn't see them in that scene, right?
It's important to think about these things, though.
Yes.
Yeah, I was into it. I mean, like, again, plot's kind of whatever. It's more about the characters, like...
Well, see, I was surprised at some of the reveals that they were just so... Yeah, of course. And then moved on. You were like, oh, yeah, you know... Oh, your father's here, Han Solo.
Yeah.
You know, Han Solo, you're like... It felt so overt.
Yeah.
I was like, really? That overt? Okay, well, I guess. Like...
Just like sudden.
Yeah, what's the guy's name? Sulk? Whatever the big...
Yeah.
Like... new emperor is.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is he... I don't know. I guess we'll find out why he's giant. I was like, he's kind of weird to me.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, your father. And then they're like, Han Solo. Like, they really had to spell it out to make sure the audience understood. And I was like, why couldn't you just said, like, your father, Solo? Or just something that, like, is, like, just a more gentle reveal. But it's just so... And then it's followed up by a scene right after that's like, Han Solo then is immediately like reaffirming that fact with some sort of thing about I can't remember what it was, but there's these kind of like follow-up scenes. So there's that one, and then there's a scene where he's talking about grandfather, and he's like looking at the like, I failed you, Darth Vader head. Right. And then he's like talking about grandfather, grandfather, wow! And then right afterwards, then suddenly, I think it was like Leia. There was some scene right after that.
I needed that scene because I like it. For some reason, again, doesn't click to me that would be his grandfather.
Right.
So even though it should be obvious,
it's not.
Yeah.
You're the obvious. It becomes an obvious question maybe to some. It's like, because they were dating, so is that that's the mom? Right. So you're left with the question mark.
That's true.
So you're left with the dangling thread. Yeah. Some people,
yeah.
Again, if they watch those, if they don't, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting. I'm sure they had to do that for an audience so that they're not assuming that people have actually seen any of the previous Star Wars films, because there are people who probably haven't seen.
Absolutely,
them.
Yeah.
The Han Solo father Kylo Ren scene on the bridge was interesting. Like kind of in the middle. Well, yeah, I guess it's sort of closer to the end. It's kind of a big climax scene of the death of Han Solo.
All that stuff.
Did you see it coming?
When he gave Chewie the detonator, I thought like, that's interesting, because Han would normally just do that himself, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when he went to confront Kylo Ren, I was like, okay, well, this probably is not going to go well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so the whole time, like, he's handing the lightsaber over and everything, I'm like, the closer I got to the moment, the more sure I was, this is probably the end.
Yeah. For
Han Solo, which, you know, is like bittersweet. Like it was a good end for him, I think.
You know what it felt a little bit like to me? Watching that scene. You remember we used to joke about the second Planet of the Apes film, where Charlton Heston would only do the film if they killed off his character and made the whole world explode.
Yeah.
And so they did.
Yeah.
And then they still managed to find a way to make a sequel to it.
Yeah.
It felt a little bit like that. It felt a little bit like, if I were to be totally honest, it felt a bit like Harrison's like, I do not want to play Han Solo ever again. You need to kill off the character in this film. That's the only way I will agree to do this. Yeah. And basically they were like, we will do anything. We need Han.
well, they made it work, and they got their money's worth because they use a lot of them.
He works it, and he's like one of the real like kind of gravitas forces in the film. Like he carries it.
I don't know what it is about the character because it's just on paper. It's maybe because Han Solo
the vanilla
became
rogue.
the template. Yeah, he's like
I think so.
The roguish smuggler. You know, just sort of.
He's the ultimate template.
Yeah, and he just like just super entertaining. Like I loved every moment Han Solo was on the screen.
Yep.
And so even though it's like sad to lose him, again, it's all part of that handoff to this next generation of
I also think it's a bit of a handoff to like Mark Hamill because I think in the next film we're going to get more Mark,
which I'm actually excited about too. Like
exactly, and I think they wanted that.
Yeah.
They were like, "Hey, look forward to a little bit of Mark action in the next one because you know he's going to be good."
Well, and for that reason, it was good that they revealed him because like they blew up the Star Killer or whatever it's called, and they went back and they kind of people had their kind of sad goodbyes to Han Solo and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I assumed the movie was over then, and then they take off. I'm like, oh, are we going to get Luke in this movie too? Okay, cool.
Right at the end.
Because I kind of figured like the next movie would be like, almost like the search for Spock, you know? Like, it would be like...
Search for Luke.
Yeah, pretty much. Like they had the map and stuff, but
Star Wars 8.
There might be like sort of an adventure to finding him.
Yeah, well, wacky adventure.
But they just find him, so we'll see what happens. But I'm excited about Luke and a beard. I don't know why. Like this seems like a more interesting Luke to me than because in the original movies, like Luke's is like the least interesting of the main characters.
Well, and to be honest, he's come a long way too.
Yeah.
Like I think his acting chops that he's like practiced for so many years, and like his voice acting work, and I just think he'll have more dimensionality to him now. Because actually, he's interesting to watch through episode 4, 5, and 6 because he gets progressively better and better.
Oh yeah,
each time.
Absolutely.
So he's a really
couldn't
cool
be worse
to
than
watch.
episode 4.
Yeah, he's got some really cringy scenes in 4.
But in 6, absolutely, he does a good job of depicting sort of his struggle with light and dark in that movie. Yeah,
totally.
And when he shows up in Jabba's hut in the beginning, there he's got real menace, and you believe in.
Yep.
That
it's got some presence.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So
whereas he didn't have that in the first one, really.
No, he wasn't really supposed to. He was supposed to be like some kid from the backwater.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm on board. I'll go watch the next one for sure.
What did you think of the music in this one? Did you notice it?
No, not so much.
See? Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was very, very... I tried the second... Because I walked out the first time and I went, I didn't even notice the music.
I even had moments where I was intentionally kind of looking for it.
Yep.
And when I was listening to it, it didn't seem distinctive.
Yep.
Whereas, again, in the prequels, you have,
there's some really distinctive stuff.
Darth
Maul's thing is over the top.
It's very bombastic.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very...
yeah,
exactly. So this is much more kind of feels like it's woven into everything else that already exists.
Oh, I feel so intense now.
That's the idea.
Put that out of my system.
But there was singularly by itself, separate from the movies, was a pretty popular piece of music.
Yep.
Which is kind of interesting. So yeah, the new music on one listening and watching the movie. Maybe it's be one of those things. The more I watch it, the more certain themes will stick out.
Yeah, there's really only one theme that stuck out to me the second time when I was listening through intentionally to hear the music.
Yeah.
And the one was, Ren, Kylo Ren, Ray. Thank you.
Ray. Yeah.
Character names, I don't know. Some of them I'm like, really? But that just seems. They're sort of forgettable to me. I have a hard time remembering some of the names. The Emperor character, I don't remember his name. I remember Kylo Ren, and then there's the pilot guy. Don't remember.
Kylo Ren's got 2 names, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker. These other guys are just Finn, just Rey.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe I
remember Finn. Somehow Finn works, but
yeah.
Anyways, Rey has a little theme. There's a little theme music when she's first kind of.
I would assume that they all
pulling
would,
stuff.
I assume Finn would have one too, and Poe Dameron even, and
look at you remembering names. Have you been reading?
Well, I did a little bit of reading before this.
Yes, you did.
I probably wouldn't have remembered Poe Dameron just after the movie because he's not in it a ton, but he's
Dash
also
Rendar.
That guy.
Dash Rendar.
Part of the reason why I think he'll be good is just it's actually quite a good actor. I don't know if you know Oscar Isaac.
I know he's solid. It just there was something about the character I didn't see a lot of dimensionality from him in the moments that he's on there. He just felt a little bit Wedge and Biggs to me.
Yeah, apparently they invited Wedge to be in the movie to reprise his role, which I kind of like Wedge is like one of those like fringe characters.
Yeah.
And the actor turned it down because he said it would be boring for him. Which, probably would have been. Probably would have been like had 2 lines and been kind of a background extra. Here's our General Antilles. He's not doing anything. Look, Admiral Akbar's still here.
It's a trap.
Everybody wanted him to say that.
They did definitely throw in a lot of the aliens. Like, they threw in the aliens from a lot of films into this one. Although I didn't really see any Greedo types, but whatever that species is called.
Yeah.
But there's definitely like a whole
the guy with like the little
smorgasbord.
fins on his cheek was flying an X-wing, and he was like in Jedi, and I think that I read he's supposed to be the same character. Yeah.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite scene in Return of the Jedi when he does that. I want to make an animated GIF of the guy going like.
The scene that like is like kind of a callback to Mos Eisley, like when they go into the kind of pirate den or whatever, and they got the music going and stuff. But there's all these like fantastic costumes and stuff, and like just so much more satisfying than that stupid diner in Return of like an Attack of the Clones when he goes in and like ugh.
You really like that movie, hey?
Oh man, the movie is so bad. It has like
tell me how you really feel.
There's stuff in it that's good, but oh man, it's just like it's the most bipolar of all the movies.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I found that really satisfying. Again, just a really kind of obvious callback to do. But just I love seeing like real costumes and
the
like,
music. The music actually there is probably probably the most distinct piece of music. Because it doesn't try and be modern or like not of its time.
Yeah.
Like, because just watching the like Return of the Jedi when they brought in that new song in the Jabba scene.
Yeah. Oh, man. That might be my least favorite scene in any Star Wars thing.
So bad.
Which is
it's so cringy bad.
Yeah.
And so the one that they had before that, they had like dun, 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 dun. Like I think actually it's still in the special editions.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. It has that kind of like funky noise in the background.
It worked, and you still had like kind of like Boba Fett kind of lurking in the background, and like there's an atmosphere to it.
But you didn't have him doing this.
Oh yeah.
They added that. They added for some reason they decided it was really important to have him macking on the ladies. No, it was brand new.
Yeah.
It's a brand new shot of like they went and constructed a brand new scene of 2 women, and then like Boba Fett being like he does this chin thing where he's like, hey, because that's what like guys who are hitting on girls do. They like touch the bottom of the chin. You should see actually the photos of the guy who plays that. He's hilarious. He looks like he's straight out of Napoleon Dynamite. There's a photo of him without the helmet on. He's got like the big glasses and like a big like mustache, like the Magnum PI stash. Yeah. Oh, it's hilarious.
You never know who's under the helmet.
You never know who's under the helmet.
In this movie, they had a few cameos, like Daniel Craig was a stormtrooper, James Bond.
Yeah, and so apparently was Nigel Godrich, the Radiohead producer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
but it's cool that they're in there. But like, throw us a bone, man. We want to see them. Throw me a shot where you can see them somehow.
I mean, like if you're directing a Star Wars movie and you
like,
do whatever you want, and you're like, yeah, sure, you can be Stormtrooper, whatever, get in there.
Yeah, why not?
Anything else you want to say about this movie?
It's good.
It is good, absolutely.
9 out of 10.
You said it is not as good as you hoped it would be. I would say this was.
It was very incredibly solid, 0 complaints, super entertaining. I don't know what I could have got more out of it.
Right, and that's why I actually say that I can't imagine it being any better. Not that it's a perfect movie, but
yeah, I guess I wanted it to be perfect.
Right, and again, I went into it thinking this is there to make sure that everything else they have plans for is going to work, and it accomplished that to a T, I think.
Yeah.
And is I think a really entertaining standalone movie, but I have a feeling that once all of the trilogy movies come out and spin-offs and everything, we'll see this as like just the beginning of all that. Like it's not really going to be its own thing so much.
Yeah, sort of like A New Hope, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense.
I mean, if I watch like A New Hope and Empire and Jedi, I mean, A New Hope is the least interesting one to me.
Yep.
Yeah. So I kind of imagine this will be kind of similar. But if they're all even as good as this, then I'll be thrilled. Yeah, absolutely. So and in today's,
I'm worried about the in between movies. I'm not gonna lie. Like Rogue One and the other like side. I'm like, no, it's gonna be too much Star Wars. I'm nervous. How about those?
Is Rogue One the next one they're doing?
Rogue One is the next film we will see.
So I bet that is probably going to be the Poe Dameron movie. I mean, I'm sure they probably clarified out there what it is, but I'm all for it. Like, I think those like other kind of movies will be the ones where directors can take chances on, and we're going to get like the biggest divergence in quality. Like, there'll probably be some amazing ones, and there'll probably be some that are totally crap.
I hope they're all just amazing.
But
that's what I'm hoping for, that they're like, we will not ever tolerate anything crap with Star Wars ever again. That's what I want. I want that line in the sand where it's like, a no garbage policy. Kathleen, I'm looking at you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Put it in place.
Yeah. Doing God's work.
Yeah. If you change it up, though, I think if you change up the talent, it does help.
Well, they're doing that, right? They've got different directors doing all of this stuff, and they're all young and exciting, and people who grew up loving Star Wars. You know, so they have fans who are very talented at what they do doing this. So
it's so nice to not have George doing it. I'm sorry, George. I love your imagination, but oh my goodness, it's so nice to have JJ and some other people coming in, going like, well, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. This is how I think right would look. Let's do this. Like, it's just nice. It just feels respectful.
What? And if those guys come in too, like there's such like if you like Rian Johnson's the guy doing the second in the trilogy, and now he has like
Episode
all
8.
These checks and balances. What's that?
Episode 8.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
He has all these checks and balances of even just what's going to come before him with J.J. Abrams, and there's it's sort of the advantage of having this huge conglomerate.
Yeah.
Whereas like George Lucas did the movies, obviously huge hits, created tons of fans, and then '99 he's ready to release Phantom Menace. There's nobody telling him no.
Yeah, there's no brain. Well, maybe he had a brain trust, but there's something to having a brain trust system where you're kind of this accountability and you're collaborative. Like, you're bringing it in front of people and you're saying like, this is what I want to do. You kind of have to defend yourself a little bit, and then you have a whole bunch of diverse opinions. I mean, there's the risk of it going a bit like designed by committee. But if you stay true with a true north, you'll still be okay with that. You just have to have somebody who's strong enough to not be sucker punched into designing by committee, right?
Yeah, and I assume at the end of the day, like J.J. Abrams was still driving the bus on this particular movie. But obviously, when you have like Kathleen Kennedy heavily involved, and you have Lawrence Kasdan, Scotty Hand, and all that kind of stuff, it just helps, and it's hard
Definitely
to believe.
Helps.
Like, if you had asked anybody, any kind of geek in 1997, is George Lucas a genius? They would all have said absolutely. Like,
and then in 1999,
yeah, what the hell?
What are you doing?
Yeah, and as every movie came out, like, it sort of reaffirmed this thing that he was past it, and that. He even when he released special editions with the added scenes, which I think was 97.
That was like 97.
It was sort of him saying like, "This is what I originally had in mind all
this
along."
This is my original dream.
And
you're like, your original dream sucks.
I know. So
like,
I mean,
what are you doing to it? Don't touch.
Just after Phantom Menace, like Lord of the Rings came out, and that is something that had like 5 years of development, and Peter Jackson had two other people working very closely with him, and it was very like, even though he's the main driving force, there were other people involved that really helped shape what it was. I mean, who knows? Maybe if George Lucas had that kind of team around him, maybe he could have made the prequels into something amazing. Because I think that
it's just an accountability layer of some kind.
Yeah, there's I think honestly with any of those movies, like there's 70% of something good there, but what's bad is so bad it just drags everything else down.
There's a lot of bad.
Oh yeah. So, but thankfully this is not the case with the new one. We're both obviously stoked on it. We don't need to give like a thumbs up or thumbs down because we're both on board.
It gets the thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say 9 out of 10, which is exceedingly high for me. I use a website called critiker.com to rate all my movies.
Which we will link in the doodly doos.
Yeah, I totally recommend it. I love it. I've ranked way more movies than I should admit to, but I can't remember. It's like 2,600 or something like that. Anyways, I give it a 9 out of 10. That's on Critiker, it's very, very high.
Ditto.
Yeah.
And that's it for our review, and we may talk about Star Wars again at some point. But for now, I think we'll just call it quits.
Before we go, I just want to recount my favorite humorous moment in the movie really quick. When they're breaking into the base. I was about to say this and I got sidetracked. Finn reveals the fact that he's been a sanitation officer.
Yes, that is a good moment.
And so Han Solo was like, well, how are we actually going to pull this off? And Finn literally has no idea, which is
great.
Usually how Han Solo operates anyways. But then this idea comes to him and he's like, we'll use the Force. So it was like, that's not how it works. Just like such a great moment for like, probably most people
These
don't
two
have any
similar
idea how it
characters.
actually works, right? And he's now like stepped into this world where like,
And he's
people
using,
say,
he's
"May
like
the
almost
Force be
putting
with
out
you."
like the secret.
Yeah.
He's like, we'll use the Force.
Yeah.
Like it's like using the power of the secret to project
Exactly.
positive things into your life.
yeah.
We're going to use the Force to project positive things into our life.
Which when like Yoda's teaching about the Force, there's a whole bunch of other spiritual
Yes.
ideas.
Yes,
which
deep
are,
ones,
which are not
like
similar to the
midichlorians.
secret. Yeah. I almost shouted out midichlorians at one point in the movie, but
Oh, can I also mention the Chewbacca rage scene is amazing. That's
After
one
Han
of my
dies?
favorite scenes after Han dies and
It just starts going crazy.
she just goes nuts. I'm like, yeah, Chewbacca.
yeah.
What a Wookiee.
We always hear about the Wookiee rage. It was cool to see it for sure.
Yeah, Wookiee rage. I wanted more of it. More Wookiee rage in Episode 8, please.
The Chewbacca was great in it. They did a lot of kind of cool
Yep.
characterization with just like little sounds and little looks and
Yep.
I love
the
those-
nurse, like nursing him.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, you're so brave.
It's awesome.
He's totally like man with man flu, like
Yeah.
I am right now.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm
exactly.
so sick right
Yeah,
now.
so good. Okay.
Anyways,
May the
thank
Force
you.
be with you.
Always.